Ladies and gentlemen, the 2025 United States Grand Prix at Austin is just around the corner, and here are three reasons why you cannot miss that race. The first reason is papaya rules. The second reason is Max Verstappen's chances at the fifth world title. And the third thing is Red Bull versus Ferrari in the constructor standings, or should I say, Verstappen.com Racing versus Ferrari in the constructor standings. So we will talk about all three of them chronologically. We will start with the papaya rule situation. So not earlier, but like in the earlier part of the season, it seems that Oscar Piastri misunderstood what papaya rules meant. Papaya rules basically meant that when Lando is having a bad weekend, we will somehow fuck your weekend while helping Lando to level the playing field. That's basically what papaya rules are. And Oscar Piastri seems to have just realized it at the Singapore Grand Prix. Because earlier, in the previous races, Piastri was thinking that papaya rules means when you are racing against your teammate, be very careful. Don't attempt 50-50 moves. Don't just send it for a move that might not be there. Be cautious, give each other ample space, and obviously the biggest cardinal sin, do not crash into your teammate. If the team is going to, if the team makes some unfair things, biases for one driver, they're gonna make it up for other driver in some type of way. That's what Oscar Piastri thought what papaya rules meant. After the Singapore Grand Prix, now in the Singapore Grand Prix, what happened is Lando Norris crashed into Oscar Piastri, not crashed into Oscar Piastri, but shoved Oscar Piastri off the way in order to get P3, and the team didn't say anything. Also, in the race, Oscar Piastri had a slower stop, due to which he lost time to Lando Norris. The team did not say Lando to lift off for a few seconds so that Oscar can catch up. So the definition of the papaya rules in the mind of Oscar Piastri has evolved, because now clearly you can go for 50-50 moves. You can go for moves that are barely there. You can make contact with your teammate, and slow pit stops are genuinely a part of racing, including bad luck, including unfair penalties, which Oscar Piastri got. Now, going into the United States Grand Prix in Austin, things will get interesting. Because the McLaren are going to qualify around each other, and going into turn one, they are gonna tangle. Their goal is to get ahead of each other. We will see a glimpse of that during the sprint race if both of these guys start on the front row. But we will definitely see the McLaren boys battling it out hard, because right now Oscar Piastri is going to come back for blood. He has been not calming, but like masking his ruthlessness and aggression in the initial part of the season. But now, after Singapore, after he has been fucked over enough times by the papaya team, he's gonna make a comeback. He will go ahead and send it around the outside or through the inside of Lando Norris in order to steal positions from him. And another interesting thing about the papaya rule situation in Austin Grand Prix is that United States Grand Prix in Austin is a place where teammates can collide, right? In 2015 Formula 1 season, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg had a bit of a situation. So Lewis shoved Nico Rosberg off of the road into turn one at the start of the race, went ahead and won the Grand Prix, and won his third Drivers' Championship in the process. Now, I'm not saying history repeats, but it's been 10 years. It's two teammates who are almost evenly matched. One of them is slightly better. This time it's Piastri, and Piastri is leading the World Championship. If he gets a very big decisive victory over Lando Norris in Austin by shoving him off in turn one, kind of like what Norris did to Piastri in Singapore, he shoved him off and got a podium place, the chances of that happening here is significantly high. Because in Singapore, obviously, racing is almost impossible. It's kind of like Monaco with walls. I mean, not Monaco with walls. I mean, Singapore has walls. Singapore is basically Monaco of the East. But in United States Grand Prix, it's a technical track. There is overtaking available around turn 12, also in the start-finish straight. I mean, wheel-to-wheel battle. There are a lot of corners that you can have wheel-to-wheel battles, and Oscar Piastri is going to pull a Lewis Hamilton on Lando Norris in order to go ahead and steal position from him. And that's going to be critical in the entire McLaren drivers fighting for the world title situation, because the goal for Piastri is very simple. He has a 63-point lead over Max Verstappen. As long as he doesn't lose on an average of 10 points per race, like per race weekend to Verstappen, he's good to go. As long as he's like losing 5, 6, 7 points to Verstappen every race weekend, it's fine. He doesn't even need to worry about that. The main guy is Lando. He needs to put a little bit of extra buffer between himself and Lando. And thank God for Oscar Piastri, because in the last 3 weekends, Lando only managed to close by like 4 points per race, which is not too much, not too little either, but it could have been more. In the last 3 weekends, Oscar Piastri has lost his lead to Lando and also to Max, more to Max than to Lando, which gotta give Piastri some confidence, because on races where Piastri was nowhere, like in Baku, Norris failed to take advantage of it, right? And each time he took advantage of Piastri, it was only by a handful of points, which is decent. So Oscar Piastri needs to outscore Norris, muscle his way past, which is gonna happen because now the Constructors' title is wrapped up. We will see some action wheel to wheel in the United States Grand Prix. We will see a repeat of 2015, where both of the McLaren boys, I mean, there it was both of the Mercedes boys in 2015, Hamilton and Rosberg, but this time it's gonna be Norris and Piastri trying to shove each other off into turn 1, and we'll see who comes out on top. We will see the meltdown at McLaren. The second reason why you should tune in into the 2025 Austin Grand Prix is Max Verstappen's title chances. Now, before you guys start laughing and putting in some comments that it's so far away, 63 points, hear me out, let me land. People always say that in the next 6 races, Verstappen has to close 63 points to Piastri. But they fail to mention that in the last 3 races, Verstappen took out 41 points from Piastri's lead. That's some insane numbers. If in the next 3 races, by the time the Brazilian Grand Prix is wrapped up, Verstappen takes out another 41 points out of Piastri, I know it's probably not going to happen. Lightning doesn't strike twice. But in Brazil, Interlagos, rainy, like anything can happen. In Mexico, anything can happen. In United States, anything can happen. Like I was just talking that Oscar Piastri now knows the true definition of the papaya rules. If, God forbid, if both of the McLaren boys tangle, then Max Verstappen is going to win the race because the Red Bull has been competitive. We'll talk about that in a second. And he will boom another 25 points on Oscar Piastri. So the first thing is you have to, like, if it is mathematically possible, then it is possible for Max Verstappen. He is that guy. You have to give him that respect. The second thing is, like within the second point of discussion in this video, is Red Bull's resurgence, Red Bull's improvement in performance. And when I say Red Bull's improvement in performance, I'm only talking about Max Verstappen, because Yuki Tsunoda only performed in Azerbaijan and then in Singapore he was shit. So Verstappen is now finding more comfort, more predictable balance from corner to corner, from track to track. Yes, in Singapore he was complaining a lot, and one of the primary reasons is none of the teams and none of the drivers had any kind of long runs in the practice sessions, because the practice sessions were disrupted by crashes and yellow flags and red flags and whatnot. So Max couldn't fine-tune his RB21 for long runs in Singapore, and his complaints were a little bit, understandable. I'm obviously not going to sit here and say that they were dominant. The qualifying did most of the job. But on race day, the McLarens had a quicker car. But at the same time, Max Verstappen's magic was enough to secure P2, outscore both of the McLaren individually, not together. But he outscored Norris and Piastri. He took points away from both of them, closed up in the championship standings in Singapore. This was a track where they were supposed to struggle. And that's the thing that not a lot of people understand. Okay, Monza, I understand. A lot of fast flowing track. Verstappen is great at it. Poetry in motion. You gotta see the onboard pole lap in Monza of Max Verstappen. Poetry in motion. In Azerbaijan, you can still give some benefit of doubt that it was windy conditions, and also in Azerbaijan there's a lot of straights. You can give some benefit of doubt that okay, Monza and Azerbaijan played to Verstappen's strengths because they played to RB21's strengths as a car. Because RB21, Verstappen's 2025 Formula 1 car, is good in high-speed corners. So you can, a little bit of that is attributed or can be attributed to that aspect. But how do you explain Singapore? Forget the race for a second, because Verstappen was very confident and comfortable in the qualifying session as well. If it was not Lando Norris's dirty air, he would have been closer to George Russell. I personally don't think he had a 10th and a half to beat George Russell for pole. Maybe he did, who knows, but I don't think that. He could have been closer to George Russell like in the qualifying standings. Obviously it wouldn't have mattered because he still would have been P2, but you gotta understand that Singapore was a track where Red Bull would have struggled. It's not their strong track. Still, Verstappen managed to fight for pole. He was legitimately the only contender for pole, and the McLaren boys were fucking nowhere. So Verstappen, despite being in a car which theoretically shouldn't have performed in Singapore the way it did, he was fighting for pole. I mean, he was never really challenging Russell for the win. He was barely holding on to P2 if you watch the race and listen to Verstappen's radio, but still impressive. So I'm going to go on a limb and say that Verstappen is going to be competitive, significantly competitive in the remaining 6 races. And also one thing, it's going to be a little bit controversial. I think Verstappen can win the next 6 races. Max Verstappen is the type of guy, if he has a car that has half a chance of winning a Grand Prix, he's going to win the Grand Prix. We saw that in 2023. No one really had a chance. I mean, yeah, in some races in Singapore, we had Carlos Sainz, and earlier in some races, we had Sergio Perez. And in Qatar Sprint, we had, Oscar Piastri. But usually it was the Max Verstappen season. And when he has the car, and now we know that he has the car. Now we know that in 2025, for the last 6 races, he has a car that can consistently fight for pole positions across tracks. RB21 was fighting for pole in the last 3 races, which were very different tracks from one another. It's going to happen for the next remaining 6 races. He's going to be competitive in the main race, the sprint race, qualifying session, sprint qualifying session. It doesn't fucking matter. All we gotta do is listen to Verstappen radio in FP1 or Verstappen's interview after the Friday practice sessions has been concluded. And then if he says that I'm finding more balance in the car, I'm feeling confident in the car, then it's basically game over. He's gonna win the race. So Verstappen is actually closer and has bigger chance to win the 2025 World Drivers' Championship, to make it 5 in a row than most people will give him credit for. First thing is, he is Max Verstappen. The second thing is the Red Bull is strong. And the third thing is the McLaren drivers could crash and take each other out, as I just explained in the papaya rules section. And now let's talk about the final topic of the video, which is the battle between Red Bull and Ferrari in the constructor standings. There was a time in which we were talking about Mercedes versus Ferrari in the constructor standings. How the tables have turned. How shit that glorified midfield team is. I'm talking about Ferrari, of course. So right now, Red Bull is only 8 points behind Ferrari. And the way they are executing their weekends and the way their, very fragile car is, Verstappen can single-handedly outscore Leclerc and Hamilton for the remaining 6 Grand Prix. It's gonna happen. It will be really embarrassing for Ferrari to lose the Constructors' Championship to one guy. They're probably gonna lose it. I mean, the entire field lost the Constructors' Championship to one guy in 2023, but that car was extremely dominant. I guess you can give that some benefit of doubt. Verstappen single-handedly smoked everybody, including teams. Sergio Perez never had a chance. Anyway, in 2025, with Red Bull, the kind of start of the season that they had, and the kind of car troubles they had at the initial part of the season, and the way that Ferrari kind of were a little bit consistent, at least on Leclerc's side of the garage and also in the Hamilton side of garage after the summer break, it'll be a shame if I just spit on my screen. It'll be a shame if Max Verstappen closes that 8-point gap and still pulls Red Bull, further up in the standings in P3 and puts a bit of a buffer between themselves and Ferrari. And it's gonna happen. When we were talking about Mercedes versus Ferrari for P3 in the constructors, P3 or P2, or is it P2? P2 in the constructors. Mercedes versus Ferrari. When we were talking about that for P2 in the constructors, the only advantage that Ferrari had was Mercedes going in the wrong direction in terms of car development, or not understanding their car's characteristics enough, which is still true. Right now, Mercedes don't know if their car works in some track and why it works and why it doesn't work. They have no fucking clue. But on a track, if their car works, they can get it in the window, like in Singapore, in the race before that. What was it called? Azerbaijan. In those type of situations where their car just clicks and performs, they are there to get the results. Kimi Antonelli included. In case of Ferrari, they will be very promising in the practice sessions, then they will trip over each other and their borderline illegal car, which is extremely fragile and starts to, break and fall apart when the driver starts to push it. They'll just get in their own way and, take themselves out of contention for P2. Right now, it seems like Ferrari may not even finish P3 in the constructor standings. As I mentioned, Max Verstappen can single-handedly outscore Leclerc and Hamilton for the remaining 6 races to close the 8-point gap and then pull a buffer on them. So that'll be very interesting to see how the United States Grand Prix panned out. Last year, Ferrari were 1-2 here. Verstappen had that amazing battle with Lando Norris. In 2015, 2 teammates collided, which decided the World Championship, the Drivers' Championship at least. Was the Mercedes Driver Championship in 2015 concluded before the United States Grand Prix? Because if it did, the pattern matches. Anyway, either way, I gotta wrap this fucking video up. In conclusion, you have to watch the 2025 United States Grand Prix in Austin, because the McLaren drivers are gonna crash, Max Verstappen is gonna win and close the gap, and Ferrari are gonna get in their own way and make a mess of themselves, and we will have some new memes. Charles Leclerc's pain will intensify, and Lewis Hamilton will visibly see his chances of winning an 8th world title fade in front of his own eyes. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.